Coming live from YouTube studios in Los Angeles, California, it's Comic Community Reviews with Sarah Smash. Good evening, America. I'm Greco Fabulous, filling in tonight for Sarah Smash. Tonight's top story, Batman issue number 611. It's just a little hush. Not like I faint every time we touch. Alright, let's get to it. So at the end of Batman issue number 610, Batman and Catwoman play a little tonsil hockey and then decide to head to Metropolis in search of Poison Ivy, which brings us to issue 611. Now, I don't want to just tell you what happens in this review. I want this to be organic, like I'm reading it for the first time. So, in addition to dishing out the facts, I want to talk about my initial reactions and gut feelings as I interpret and analyze this issue and overall storyline. I'm sure some of my theories will be wrong, or it might sound like I'm reaching for deeper meaning, but in the end, it's all in the eye of you, the reader. So, if you're okay with that, then let's begin our journey. First off, let's break the cardinal rule of all reviews and start off by judging this book by its cover. So I see a lot going on here. On the surface, you see Catwoman tangled up in what we can assume are Poison Ivy's vines, with the shadow of Batman right behind her. And this is all set on a split backdrop of Gotham City and Metropolis. Additionally, there also seems to be a lot of religious imagery as well. Catwoman is in the crucified position. Batman has a halo around his head, which would make sense if he's going to ultimately be her savior. And then there are multiple ways that you can look at the contrast between the dark Gotham skyline and the bright Metropolis skyline. Well, number one, you can see it as a difference between the tone of the two cities and the inhabitants within them. But if you want to keep up with this religious theme, you can also view it as further symbolization of light versus dark, good versus evil, or heaven and hell. In this case, I would argue that Gotham is Batman's heaven and Metropolis is his hell. Now that may be a stretch, but there's a point later in this issue which might give some credence to that. So let's move on to the first page. So on the first page we see Bruce Wayne arriving in Metropolis, and in his inner monologue he says, "Metropolis. It is very different from Gotham City, and for that alone, I try to avoid coming here. There are not many reasons for Batman to be in this city." So that quote right there is why I would argue that Metropolis is Batman's hell. For a man that's dedicated his entire life to bringing justice to Gotham and living in the dark, being in a place that negates his entire existence doesn't sound like a fun place to be. Batman needs Gotham as much as Gotham needs him. So in the first few panels of this book, Bruce's mind tends to wander as he jumps from his current business in Metropolis to his kiss with Catwoman, and then to a childhood memory of his first trip to Metropolis with his father, Alfred, and friend Tommy Elliot, who we met earlier in the Hush storyline. Ironically enough, Bruce actually runs into Tommy at the airport. The two begin to reminisce some more about their first trip to Metropolis, but Bruce is still obviously distracted as thoughts of Catwoman continuously interrupt his conversation. This panel is a great visual indication of two streams of consciousness overlapping in the same cerebral plane. So as you can see, the borders are individual panels that deal with individual memories, both current and past, but here the two panels overlap as Bruce's mind is being shared by the thought of kissing Catwoman and his conversation with Tommy. The Catwoman memory is on top, so obviously that's what he is giving most attention to. Finally, Bruce conquers his ADD long enough so we can focus solely on the details of his first trip to Metropolis. Basically, the boys are told to stay put as Mr. Wayne goes to register for a medical convention. But as soon as he leaves, the Green Lantern just happens to fly overhead, and a battle between he and the icicle ensues. Tommy insists that the two follow the action. At first, Bruce does his best boo-boo impersonation. "I don't think that's such a good idea, Yogi." But eventually he succumbs to peer pressure. There's a poignant line in this dialogue where Bruce initially puts up a fight by saying, "Tommy, my dad said wait by the..." But then Tommy interjects, my dad said, is that how you're going to live your whole life, Bruce?" Well, you can argue that his entire life as Batman has been dictated from the grave. So at the end of the flashback, the boys get grounded for the rest of the trip, and then their relationship deteriorates as the Waynes are murdered soon after. We jump back to the present, where the first line that Tommy delivers is, "Things change." At first, Bruce mistakenly thinks he's referring to Metropolis, but Tommy clarifies that cities are meant to rise and fall, Bruce. I was referring to people. So, to me, this could either mean two things. Either you can combine it with his line in 610, where Tommy tells Alfred that Bruce is playing a dangerous game, so that this is further indications that he's suspicious of Bruce's alternate lifestyle. Or it could be a foreshadowing in that maybe Tommy himself has changed. So they quickly chat about Bruce's injuries and recovery, and then Tommy goes for the lulls with his "you're not Superman, you know" comment. The next page shows Bruce completely clocking out again, as it deals with him giving Catwoman a beacon so that if she finds Poison Ivy first, she can alert him. I think that this first panel is key, as we see Batman holding on to Catwoman and telling her not to go. It shows that he genuinely cares for her well-being, and he isn't just this abyss of vengeance. Catwoman, though, quickly shoots him down and sends him on burn notice with this: "Just because I let you kiss me, doesn't mean you get to treat me like your toy wonder." Get it? Like Boy Wonder? Then they part their separate ways. On the next page, Tommy totally calls out Bruce on his zoning out by saying, "I hope she's worth it." By the end of the page, the two eventually part ways, but not before Tommy asks Bruce if there is something that he can do for him. He then proceeds to ask if Bruce still has those antique war game pieces. Bruce says he does, and then Tommy challenges into a game. And then he also says, "And I want you to actually show up for an appointment with me to check on how you're doing." Which Bruce points out that that's two somethings you want me to do for you. And then as Tommy walks away, he says, "It is, isn't it?" Now to me, that's not just a throwaway comment. I mean, up to this point, what do we know about Tommy? He's brazen. Ever since he was a child, as Bruce mentioned, he spoke to his father like no one else dared to. And he's always had the ability to manipulate Bruce, like shown in the Metropolis memory, and just now, when he tried to slyly ask for 2 favors for the price of 1. And then, maybe I've been watching too many of the Saw movies, but anytime somebody says, "wanna play a game," I see some red flags fly up. Also, one last quote that I wanted to point out during the Green Lantern battle. Tommy mentions that the bad guy is named Icicle and he'll never win, and Bruce asks, "How do you know that?" And he says, "It's like I'm always telling you, Bruce, you gotta be able to think like your opponent." And if you remember from issue 608, Bruce loses at the game by not thinking like his opponent. So now, if Bruce is Tommy's opponent in this game, I wonder what he has in store for him. And I wonder if the results will be the same. So then we switch to inside the Daily Planet. Lois Lane is finishing up an article when Bruce sneaks up behind her with some flowers. The two embrace, and then a set of beady little eyes behind some spectacles comments, "I'm not sure that PDA is the most appropriate form of behavior with the owner of the Daily Planet." Oh, Clark, what a square you are. After reading these 2 pages, all I can think is, how are Clark Kent and Lois Lane together? It's just such a clash. I mean, here she is with her sexy red and black power color skirt and blouse combo, talking about how putting a space in the word therapist makes the rapist. And then you have Clark being like, "Well, Lois, you shouldn't be making out with your boss." And then just stepping aside when the arrival of Bruce Wayne forces Lois to push aside their dinner plans. Man, what a chump. So Bruce asks to use Lois's computer to talk to Oracle and asks for an update on a plant called Aztec Gilia. She mentions that it requires ethylene, which LexCorp makes. However, they've re-engineered it so that it is resistant to changes in temperature. So Batman sends her off to hack into LexCorp. On the next page, people finally start discovering that Bruce Wayne is around. So Perry White's here just going gaga for him. And this triggers an inner monologue in Bruce's mind where he says, "You know, Perry is too good of a reporter to not have uncovered Clark's secret yet." So then he compares him to Commissioner Gordon and says, you know what? Maybe Batman and Superman have more people in their lives that they can trust than they'd like to admit, including each other. But basically, the end of this page proves that everything I just said was all an act. I mean, Lois and Clark are definitely an odd couple, but they definitely ham it up so that, normal people can in no way equate Superman with Clark Kent. So at the end of this page, Lois and Clark have a secretive conversation where she basically says that she was just flirting with Bruce to try to get some information. And since she failed, Clark mentions that, well, there's only one way to find out what he's up to, and that involves tights and flights. And before we leave the Daily Planet, she reminds Clark that despite how Bruce Wayne acts when he's Batman, just remember that you two are friends. On the next page, the scene switches to LexCorp, where Batman confronts Talia Heed, the estranged daughter of Ra's al Ghul and current head of LexCorp. He inquires about Aztec Gilia, and if anyone has acquired any large doses of ethylene recently. She says she'll look into it. This scene is pretty cut and dry, although Talia does point out that there is something different about Batman that she doesn't like. Which makes me think about Tommy's line, people change. Also, when Batman's beeper goes off, she also mentions that he's vibrating, which could either be sexual innuendo, given their history and their proximity to each other, or a symptom of Batman's changing. Next, Batman and Catwoman meet on top of a speeding train, where Batman points out that Metropolis is always lit, like it's important or something. That to me shows his uneasiness with the lack of darkness and shadows in Superman's home turf. This is definitely an away game for Batman. Catwoman makes a catty comment about not many women can wear Chanel No. 5 and make it work. So obviously she knows that he was with Talia. So that little expression of jealousy shows that she cares too. Batman mentions that he knows where Poison Ivy is. Catwoman says, so do I. But the reason that she decided to stay behind was, she wanted Batman to know why she wanted to get to Ivy first. And that's because Ivy took control of my mind. She made me do things I may have been prone to, but that's my decision. No one gets to violate me like that. Understood? Batman's probably like, but I want to violate you. So basically this little monologue has a double meaning. Not only is she talking about her feelings for wanting revenge on Poison Ivy, but I think she's also dictating the terms of any possible relationship between the two. So after she says her piece, she cartwheels away, and then Batman fantasizes about their kiss some more. Next we see Catwoman perched on top of a building peeking in on a skylight where Poison Ivy is. Batman has a little narrative going on here that explains that the reason why they're looking for that plant Aztec Gilia is because that is what they found in the penthouse that Killer Croc led them to in issue 610. Here's a little side note. As I was rereading this issue for this review, I couldn't find the mention anywhere as to why Batman will all of a sudden out of nowhere ask Oracle, hey, what'd you find on Aztec Gilia? Because, it wasn't in issue 610. I didn't own 609. I was literally tweeting, Scott and Johnny. I was like, hey, where the hell does he mention why he's even looking for this plant? I mean, obviously, I knew it had something to do with Poison Ivy. But, like I said, all of a sudden, he's just IMing Oracle and hey, what'd you find? So it's actually kind of funny that they didn't explain it till towards the end of this issue, for some reason. So anyways, Catwoman tracks down Ivy and tries to play like she's still under her control. I've come back to you. Have you? It's like you said, no one can resist you. Yes. But I can always tell when someone is pretending, Shrek. And the claws are out. It's pretty one-sided as Catwoman is winning handedly. At one point, Ivy even tries to bribe her with money. But Catwoman is only interested in one thing. And she channels her inner Venom and says, what color do you bleed, Spider-Man? But at that exact moment, Poison Ivy is bailed out by a vine wrap around the throat. But luckily, we judge this book by its cover, and we know that Batman is going to arrive and be her savior. So it seems like it's curtains for Ivy, as Batman says, Ivy, you are coming back to Gotham City. But she seems oddly calm as she mentions, so the kitten brought a champion. Good. I've brought mine too. And then we have our Jurassic Park T-Rex moment. No. Not here. Not now. Not him. What? Superman versus Batman? What's happening? If you come near her, you'll have to come through me. You heard the man. My Superman. So that's the ultimate cliffhanger right there. I can't imagine what it would have been like to read this off the newsstands and have to wait at least a month to find out what happens next. So, that's my in-depth review of Batman number 611. Overall, I think it was a great issue. It had drama, comedy, action, and I think you got to see all the sides of Bruce Wayne, and even the romantic in him, which doesn't appear too often. But at the same time, you got to feel for the guy. It's got to be tiring to have all that running through your mind while trying to maintain your playboy persona as Bruce Wayne and your cold stone demeanor as Batman. Alright guys, that's it for my little review. First, I just want to thank Scott for letting me be a part of the fun. And I just want to remind you guys that coming up next is Reedham Stevens' review of issue number 612. So be sure to check that out. Thanks a lot, guys.